Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the SimNFL show. Real talk about fake sports. I am your host and commissioner. You can call me Pierce. Today we are discussing all of the Week 16 action of the Pro Sim over at SimSN. If you're unfamiliar, come check us out on the website and on Discord. We would love to have you. So as always today, we're going to go over all the stats and summaries from an exciting Week 16 as we get near to the end of our 2025 regular season. We will finish with my choices for the players of the week. We'll do a quick injury update, check out the NFL standings by conference, and then talk about playoff clinching scenarios as well as the current draft order. And then we will wrap everything up with my preview for Week 17, our penultimate regular season week. So yeah, it's going to be great. A lot of great stuff to cover, so let's go ahead and dive right in. Thursday night was a great game between two playoff hopefuls in the AFC, with the Colts coming out ahead of the Bills by a final score of 27-14. Late in the first quarter, things kicked off with the Colts driving into Bills territory. Gary Freitag had a completion to Ellswick, who fumbled at the Buffalo 45-yard line. The Bills took over, but Yusei Asensio threw an interception on 3rd and 8 on that possession, giving the Colts back the ball with a great opportunity. And Freitag found Mitchell Reynolds for a 32-yard touchdown pass, opening up the scoring for the Colts. Later in the second quarter, the Colts drove again into Bills territory to the 35, but they elected to punt on 4th and 4, and that was actually blocked. So it was the Bills who were then set up with a great opportunity. Asensio found Donald Kelly for a 20-yard gain that led to a 44-yard field goal, getting the Bills on the board. In the third quarter, J.C. Lacey broke off a 57-yard run, set up another short field goal for the Bills, making it 10-6 at that point. Indianapolis still leading. And then the Colts put together their best drive, 83 yards in 10 plays. Key play, a Mitchell Reynolds 22-yard run, and then Freitag running it in from 2 yards out for the score, making the lead 17-6. But it was a Pyrrhic victory for the Colts, as in the fourth quarter, Ellswick went down after a quick pass reception. He had a tear in his quad muscle. He will be out for the remainder of the season. So the Colts moving forward without Ellswick, though their defense was able to seal the game in the fourth quarter. Thomas Ciardi with a pick six of 26 yards to basically seal the game. Bills would have had a late interception, or a late touchdown off a Freitag interception. But the Colts coming away with the 27-14 victory. After you factor in sacks, Bills only had 188 total yards in this game. Mitchell Reynolds was fantastic, 200 total yards on 32 touches with a touchdown. And then Ciardi with that big pick six to seal things as well. Colts keeping their playoff hopes alive and doing what they can to help themselves out with the victory over the Bills. Well, it was a bit of a hangover for the Browns after ending the Dolphins' undefeated season last week as they fall to the Steelers 25-16. Steelers, DeAndre, don't forget your weeders, broke off on the second play of the game for a 58-yard run. That led to a short field goal for the Steelers, and get used to that because you're going to be hearing it a lot. Steelers' next possession, Morris found running back Mark Nelson for a 51-yard gain. That also led to a short field goal. Browns finally started getting on the board in the second quarter with Rivera finding Juan Mora for a 39-yard gain. Led to an Abel Chapa 36-yard field goal. And then Pittsburgh drove to the 3-yard line right before halftime, but with the clock winding down, elected to kick a field goal. So it was 12-6 at the half, all on field goals. Steelers had drove into the Cleveland territory, and in fact, within the Browns' 10-yard line, so a goal-to-go situation, 4 times, had come away with 4 field goals to lead at 12-6. It was 18-9, still all field goals in the fourth quarter, when the Browns finally broke through, put together an 83-yard drive in 11 plays, with the big play being a 37-yard pass from Rivera to George Lovejoy that led to a 1-yard Juan Moore touchdown run for the first touchdown of the game after 54 minutes of play. But the Steelers were still leading by 2. Browns could not get a stop as the Steelers drove 75 yards. DeAndre Wieters gashing them for a 24-yard gain and then a 10-yard touchdown run to seal things and get the final touchdown on the board with under 2 minutes to go. So again, 25-16 is the final there. 6 field goals to 3. The Steelers winning. Hector Gonzalez, 6 of 6 with a long of 46 yards, and Wieters 179 total yards and a score, leading the Steelers to victory. So no clinching for the Browns this week. They are 2 games up with 2 to go. Steelers are still alive. It was a tale of 2 halves when the Bengals played the Chiefs, with the Chiefs coming back from a huge deficit to ultimately win the game 28-24. On a drive in the first quarter, the Bengals scored by giving David Taylor carries on all 6 plays of the drive. He ran for 71 yards and a touchdown, and Bengals had the early lead. In the second quarter, they went 72 yards, this time in 10 plays, including a 19-yard pass from Gurbich to John Hendrickson, the tight end, converting a 3rd and 13 on that play. They connected again for a 7-yard touchdown. Hendrickson getting the touchdown there for a 17-0 lead. Then on the next possession, Gurbich found Antonio Campaverde for 56 yards. And then Madruga for 20. And then it was reserve receiver John Bensman with the 2-yard carry on the wide receiver reverse for the touchdown. Bengals piling it on, 24-0 at the score at that point. Kansas City tried to score before the half. They drove to the Cincinnati 29-yard line. And then Theo Scribner, who was starting the game for the Chiefs, found King Angeles for a 22-yard gain. But Bengals cornerback Tommy Montero with a heads-up play stripped the ball. Bengals were able to recover and deny the Chiefs any first-half points. So it was a 24-point lead going into the half. But the Chiefs were able to bounce back in the second. In the third quarter, Scribner found tight end David Velasco for a 47-yard gain, then Velasco again for a 4-yard touchdown. They missed the extra point, did the Chiefs, so it was 24-6. Cincinnati offense did their job, drove to the Kansas City 40-yard line, but Gurbich threw an interception to Weibao to end that drive without points. On the next drive, the Chiefs converted a 4th and 2 with an Ariel Lemon Jr. run, and also a 3rd and 15 with Scribner passing to Rodolfo Chavez for 18 yards. And after those 2 big conversions, Chad Dolis found the end zone for the first time on a 2-yard run, making it 24-13. Bengals went 3 and out. Kansas City drove into Bengal territory again, but missed a 50-yard field goal. Then in the fourth quarter, Scribner went 6 of 6 on a drive to 5 different receivers for 55 yards, and Dolis found the end zone again from 7 yards out. Chiefs converted the 2-pointer, and it was 24-21 at that point. Bengals drove into Chiefs territory, but were forced to punt. The Chiefs got the ball back with about 3.5 minutes to go. Scribner did his job, hit Chad Dolis with a 44-yard pass. His next pass was incomplete, but the Bengals were called for roughing the passer, so 15 free yards there. Then Scribner completed 4 more passes, including the game winner to King Angeles from 3 yards out. Extra point made it 28-24, and the Chiefs completed a 24-point second-half comeback for the win. Scribner in the second half, get this, 23 of 29, 267 yards, and a pair of passing touchdowns. Gurbich in the second half, 4 of 13, 39 yards, and a pick. So huge performance from the Chiefs coming from behind and getting the big win. Theo Scribner, 374 yards in total for the game. There was another AFC kicking battle between the Texans and Titans, with the Texans winning on field goals 4-3. Their first score came in the first quarter. after Ryan Johnson caught a 13-yard screen pass and an 11-yard run that led to a 39-yard field goal to open the scoring. Tennessee responded with Joseph Cale ripping off a 68-yard run that led to a short field goal for them. And then they took the lead when later in the first quarter when Reimer found Jamie Murray for a 49-yard gain. And again, short field goal. And that was basically the MO for the game. The offense would break through with maybe one or two big plays and then string together enough first downs to get close and kick a field goal. It was 9-6, Tennessee leading in the fourth quarter when another one of those big plays, Travis Neal found James Brendez for a 22-yard gain on 3rd and 9. The next play, Titans got called for a 15-yard face mask, which put things into field goal range. Texans, Antonio Frank hit his third of the day from 26-yard out to tie things at 9. Tennessee was driving at the end of the game with just a minute and a half left, had the ball on their own 43, but Wayne Reimer threw a critical interception to Austin Bledsoe, who returned it to the Titans' 38-yard line. After that, Nebel ran it for 9, Johnson ran it for 8 on a first down. There was incompletion, and then one more toss from Nebel to Johnson for a 13-yard gain. And then with 3 seconds left, Frank hit the game winner from 25 yards out. And the Texans, despite only having 167 yards of total offense and only that one takeaway on defense, came away with a victory 12-9. Other than the face mask call, huge day from Jose Sola, 11 tackles, including 7 behind the line of scrimmage. But the Texans ultimately escaped with the win. The Vegas Raiders had a big game upsetting the Falcons 34-21, keeping their respective playoff hopes alive. Raiders were on it from the very first drive when Hickson hit Andrew Richards for 15, running back David Nee for 32, then Richards again for a 26-yard touchdown to start off strong. Atlanta did respond. Jose Padilla found Glenn Gervais for a 47-yard gain, and then Fulmer for a 38-yard touchdown, tying things up at 7. They were back at it in the second quarter. Padilla to Rafael Rosario for 42 yards, but Fulmer fumbled on the next play, and they would get no points. Later, still in the second quarter, James Hickson hit Andrew Richards again. This one a 49-yard gain, set up Adele Frere for, he had a 28-yard run and then a 4-yard touchdown, giving the Raiders at that point a 10-point lead going into the half. It was 20-7 in the third quarter when Fulmer broke off another great run for the Falcons, 56 yards, leading to his own 7-yard touchdown run, bringing the Falcons within a score. But Vegas responded with Hickson finding James Blank for a 15-yard gain and then a 51-yard gain, and then Jeffrey Cobbs for a 3-yard touchdown to once again make it a 2-touchdown lead. And then with about 7 minutes to go in the game, Hickson found Andrew Richards for a 38-yard touchdown to pretty much ice things. Padilla would add another touchdown in the final minutes for the Falcons, but the Raiders had wrapped things up at that point, and 34-21 was the final. James Hickson overcame 5 sacks, not including 2 others that were overturned by Falcons penalties, to throw for 446 yards and 3 touchdowns. Adele Frere was fantastic for the Raiders, 203 yards on the ground and a touchdown. Falcons had some great statistical performances, including Michael Fulmer with 195 yards and a couple scores, David Juarez and Paul McHenry with a pair of sacks each. But the Raiders' big play offense hit more than it missed, and they were able to come away with the win. On Sunday night, the Saints and the Panthers battled in a very close game, with the Panthers ultimately coming out with the victory. On the very first play of the game, Dakota Link hit Fernando Owens for a 56-yard gain, then Russell Barnes for 15, and then a 4-yard touchdown pass to Barnes, giving the Panthers the early lead. Saints would tie things up later in the first when Link was intercepted by Arthur Madrano, who returned it all the way to the Panthers' 2-yard line, leading to an easy touchdown run for Josh Bassett. In the second quarter, Landrum threw his first interception of the game. It was a deep ball intercepted by Frazier, basically an arm punt. But the Panthers would drive down for a touchdown. Eric Smith had a 27-yard run into the end zone to give the Panthers the lead. After a blocked punt for a safety, Carolina would miss a field goal right at the end of the half. Going into the half up 14-9 was the score at that point. In the third quarter, Landrum was picked off by Frazier again, but Carolina would give the ball back and on a 3-and-out, and then Landrum would find Sprouse 3 times on the ensuing drive. The first almost ended in disaster with Sprouse fumbling, but he was able to fall on it himself. And then they connected again for 18 and 36-yard gains, ultimately leading to a Milton Evans, a 1-yard touchdown run. Saints would miss the 2-point conversion, but at that point they would be up 15-14. Then later in the third quarter, the Saints would drive to the Carolina 18-yard line, but a pass completion that would have led to first and goal was called back for offensive pass interference, pushing New Orleans back to the Carolina 28-yard line, where they ultimately punted from. So no points there. But still in the third quarter, another drive, successful. Landrum to Daniel Castro, converting a 3rd and 5 with a 19-yard gain. And then Castro again hitting him for a 21-yard touchdown. And the Saints were up 22-14 at that point. And then they got another stop, got the ball back. It's the fourth quarter at this point. Landrum hits Josh Bassett for a 39-yard gain into Carolina territory. They get close enough for a 40-yard field goal, but miss it. So it's still an 8-point game at that point. Carolina would successfully tie things on their next drive with a Dakota Link bomb to Russell Barnes for a 40-yard touchdown. Kelvin Dupree would add the 2-point conversion. So that would tie it at 22. And at that point, both defenses really started to take over with huge plays trying to deliver the game winner. Panthers defense got a stop, and Link drove them down to the Saints' 32-yard line. But Eric Schaefer of the Saints forced Kelvin Dupree to fumble, and they fell on it. Saints got the ball back. But the Panthers took it away again. Andrej Harris with an interception of Okoye Landrum put the ball on the Saints' 45-yard line. Panthers looking to go ahead. But then Brent McPhail killed that drive with an 11-yard sack of Dakota Link, forcing a punt. Saints get the ball back. It's still tied, but Landrum throws his 4th interception. This is the second one for Harris on the day. He returns it to the 7-yard line. Carolina drives to the 1, but can't punch it in from there. But they are able to settle for an 18-yard field goal, which gives them the 25-22 lead. New Orleans, with one final attempt, drive to the Carolina 25-yard line. But on 4th and 3, they pass up the field goal, go for the win, do not convert. They turn it over on downs, and the Panthers are able to escape. So despite this discrepancy in record, a nail-biter in this divisional matchup with the Panthers only just escaping by the skin of their teeth, thanks to 2 interceptions each from Samuel Frazier and Andrej Harris. Landrum 312 yards, including 138 to Gregory Sprouse, but not quite enough as the Panthers are able to win this one. As for the rest of the Week 16 scoreboard, Miami easily took care of the Jets, 34-3. Jamie Ramirez, the tight end, had 4 catches for 135 yards. The New England-Baltimore game featured 20 punts and 5 turnovers. Ravens free safety Matt Perez had 2 interceptions as the Ravens beat the Patriots 21-10. Seattle beat the Giants 38-17. Clayton McGee had a fantastic game. 262 yards and 3 rushing touchdowns on 36 carries, plus 4 catches for another 70 yards receiving for Clayton. Eagles also had a 3-score victory over Minnesota, 27-6. Aaron Poole was 13 of 20 for 142 passing yards and 2 scores, plus another 93 yards rushing. Green Bay beat Chicago 20-7. Carl Frost, 21 carries, 77 yards, and a score. The Detroit defense picked off Trayvon Cothran 3 times and held him to 98 yards passing and -7 yards rushing on 10 carries. 20-3 was the final for the Lions there. Rams had a huge win over the Jaguars, 48-3. Philip Avila, 25 of 40, 329 yards, 3 touchdowns. Dallas got by San Francisco, 34-17. Christopher Lee, 14 catches, 202 yards, and 3 scores in that game. Washington absolutely blew out the Cardinals, 58-9. Stephen Tabbert, 119 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns on just 11 carries. And then on Monday night, Denver used a great second half to get by the Chargers, 37-17. Hugh Kahn, 29 carries, 192 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns, plus 45 receiving yards. So, with all of that said, here are my choices for Players of the Week. Gotta call out James Hickson for that fantastic performance, 446 passing yards. Mitchell Reynolds, 200 yards in total from scrimmage for him. Clayton McGee, over 300 and 3 touchdowns for the Seahawks. And then Christopher Lee, over 200 with those 3 touchdowns as well. On the defensive side, Jose Sola with a great game, 7 tackles for loss. Got to call out Robert Miller as well of the Commanders, 6 tackles for loss, including 3 sacks. Andrej Harris, one of a pair of great cornerback performances for the Panthers, forcing a fumble, 3 defended passes, plus 2 interceptions on the day for Harris. Juan Goldberg of the Lions, 3 tackles for loss, a forced fumble, and a pass defended for him. And then Hector Gonzalez of the Steelers with 19 points, including 6 field goals and an extra point, leading the Steelers past the Browns. So, congratulations to all of these players on being named my Players of the Week. So here is a look at the injury report. The biggest news here is, of course, Ellswick, who is out for the Colts for the rest of the season. We've also added Devontae Logan with that shoulder injury for the Ravens, as well as Victor Selsky, also a shoulder injury for the Jaguars. And then Kurt Schau is out for the Commanders with a fractured toe. Bringing people back, getting off the injured list, we have Miami tackle Raul Macy. Indianapolis's linebacker Timothy Stimac is healthy, as is Denver tackle Derek Dixon. And then finally, Seattle defensive tackle Arthur Stewart, all off the injured list and healthy for Week 17. So here is where we stand in the AFC. Miami and Denver are still going strong 1-2, having clinched their divisions. And then it is wide open from there. Cleveland and Indianapolis still going back and forth in those 3 and 4 seeds. Right now, Cleveland ahead based on common opponents. So they have the tiebreaker. Both of them still with clinching scenarios for next week, which we'll look at in just a bit. As for tiebreakers, as always, we go with division tiebreakers first, where Tennessee is ahead of Houston based on their division record. So that's 10. That's the AFC South sorted. For Jacksonville and Vegas, that one is based on conference record, where Jacksonville has a 2-game edge. And then after that, it is a 5-way tie for the last wildcard spot. Pittsburgh actually has head-to-head victories over the Chargers and the Bills, but because they have not played Tennessee, it can't be decided on head-to-head. It has to be all or nothing. However, those 2 victories are the reason that Pittsburgh has the best conference record. They're 6-4, so they're playing to stay in. The Chargers are behind them, a game behind in conference record at 5-5. And then after that, it's between Buffalo and Tennessee, where Buffalo gets the edge on common opponents. And then, as we said, the division tiebreaker, Tennessee, and then Houston at the bottom. So all of these teams still very much alive. Next coming weeks, we have Buffalo at Tennessee next week. So we have 9 versus 10 going head-to-head. And then Vegas is at Pittsburgh, so 6-7 going head-to-head. So a lot still to happen with only 2 weeks to go. Pretty much every game is important. It's going to be quite a race to the finish in the AFC. On the NFC side, things are pretty static compared to last week. So tiebreaker are the same. Dallas has pretty much every head-to-head including the 2-game head-to-head over the Eagles. So Dallas in the 6th seed as far as the wild card is concerned. As for the division leaders, Green Bay, Carolina, Rams, all still decided based on... Well, Green Bay is ahead based on conference record, 9 wins for them. Carolina is ahead of the Rams based on head-to-head. So Carolina's at 3, the Rams are at 4, Atlanta now at 5 after that loss. And then as we go down the line, Seattle is ahead of Philly and Detroit based on conference record. They have one more conference win, so they have the edge. And then Philadelphia ahead of Detroit based on strength of victory. So a lot still to happen here. We've got Philadelphia is at Seattle this week. So that's right now a play-in game, basically, for the playoffs, for that final wild card. Also, big game, Green Bay is at Miami. And both of those teams still very much with things to play for. Green Bay with seeding, and the Dolphins trying to lock up home field advantage. So going to be a fantastic, a rare Week 17 cross-conference game. Looking forward to that one as well. So as far as clinching scenarios, in the AFC, Miami and Denver have clinched, but are still fighting for home field advantage. Cleveland's still right on the cusp of clinching the North. They just need a win or a tie, or they need Pittsburgh to lose or tie. Any of those will give Cleveland the North. And then the Colts have their first clinching scenario this week. If they win and the Jaguars lose, Colts will clinch the South with a week to go. On the NFC side, we have 3 divisions locked up. Carolina and Atlanta still fighting in the South. Both of those teams are in the playoffs. It's just a matter of who is going to be able to host a playoff game by being the division winner. Carolina can clinch the South if they win and Atlanta loses this coming week. Atlanta, as long as they win, can basically force their Week 18 game to be the division championship. So Atlanta is a game behind right now, but they beat Carolina once. So if Atlanta wins this week, no matter what happens with Carolina, either the teams are tied or Carolina is a game ahead. But either way, when they play Week 18, if Atlanta wins, they will leapfrog the Panthers. So yeah, Atlanta very much controls their own destiny. 2 wins and they are division champions. But as long as they win this week, it will all come down to Week 18 when the teams go head-to-head. So that brings us to the current draft order, which today is sponsored by the SimNFL Draft Guide. That's right, SimNFL every year makes a printed draft guide, which you can purchase and keep in your home. It's a fantastic product. It is both practical and a great memento. There are literally hundreds of pages of analysis of top players. There are statistical analyses. There are mock drafts made by users. It's a fantastic product. Contact Alex Fall now if you'd like to pre-order your copy for 2026. Thank you to the NFL Draft Guide for sponsoring this segment. So, the current draft order is mostly static at the top. San Francisco and New Orleans will play next week, and the loser of that will almost certainly be the number 1 seed. Have the number 1 pick in the draft. The Saints, of course, traded their pick to Detroit, so Detroit will be watching that game very carefully. Minnesota, as the lone 12-loss team, is in 3. And then no change in the 4-11 teams, with the exception that the Jets and Tampa Bay are now tied in terms of strength of schedule, so 7 and 8 have still yet to be determined. The only movement, Baltimore and Kansas City dropping with their victories, Cincinnati bumping up just a little bit. But here is where we stand with 2 weeks to go. Less movement now as things are solidifying just a little bit. So, in Week 17, a great slate of games. I will tell you right now, there are 14 of the 16 games on tap that have playoff implications. That's at least one, if not both teams, are fighting for seeding or fighting for a playoff spot or home field advantage, some kind of playoff impact for 14 of these games. And One of the only two that doesn't is, again, the Saints 49ers game, which very much should determine the number one pick. So a lot of important football. We start things off Thursday night with Atlanta going to Minnesota. Again, if Atlanta wins that game, they can essentially force a division championship game with the Panthers in Week 18. At noon, fantastic Green Bay at Miami. Again, a great, rare late-season cross-conference matchup with both teams still having a lot to play for. Also noon, we get Vegas at Pittsburgh. Again, two teams right on the cusp of qualifying for the playoffs, but needing to win to get in. And then Detroit still fighting for their playoff life against Carolina. Then in the afternoon, Buffalo at Tennessee. Again, two teams trying to stay alive and can help their own fortunes by winning. The Rams are at Houston, and then Philadelphia is at Seattle. So the winner of that game will have the inside track toward that final wildcard spot in the NFC. On Sunday night, Washington goes to Baltimore to face the Ravens, and then Monday night we have the Giants at Chicago, which does not have the playoff implications that so many others have had. Blame the schedule maker for that one, but should hopefully still be a close game and a fantastic contest. That is everything I have for this edition of the SimNFL show. Thank you so much for stopping by. And as I say to all users in all of our sims, good luck and have fun.